The second impeachment motion against the president will be put to a vote at the Assembly at any moment now. It's currently 3:52 and the session begins at 4 p.m. We will bring that live, but first we're joined by Jung-wook Hwang, Chief Executive Officer at Loquant. Lawyer Hwang, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me here.
And our reporter Kim Bo-kyung also joins us here. Good to see you, Bo-kyung.
Good to see you, Jungmin.
Lawyer Hwang, let me start with you. The opposition bloc holds 192 seats. It needs at least 8 more votes from the ruling bloc to impeach the president. Just 1 week ago, the motion was scrapped because it fell short of the quorum. Although 3 ruling party lawmakers broke ranks to cast their votes, how do you forecast today's second attempt?
So, as a background, 7 lawmakers from the ruling party have publicly announced that, 1, they will attend and vote yes to impeachment. So, which means that just needs 1 extra ruling party lawmaker to make the quorum and for the impeachment motion to go forward. I think I just saw the news flash from the ruling parties, the lawmakers meeting that just ended. I think they're actually going to participate in the vote and let individual lawmakers decide. Although the party line is still vote no on impeachment motion, it seems that they will let individuals to actually vote. So in which case, I actually expect to see a fair number of defections.
Mm-hmm. And if the motion passes, the president will be suspended from his position.
That's right.
What happens then? Who's going to fill his shoes?
Well, believe it or not, we South Koreans actually have had practice doing this. Almost exact same scenario played out in 2016. So which means that presidential office is suspended. So next in the line of succession will take place as a caretaker. Back then it was Hwang Kyo-won, who was prime minister then, acting as acting president in place of then President Park Geun-hye, who was impeached. Now, Yoon Suk-yeol is the current president. If he's impeached, he'll be removed from his office, not permanently, but temporarily. And the next in line is Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, who's supposed to take over. Now, there's a slight complication in today's picture because Prime Minister Han himself is under investigation. So opposition party could conceivably impeach him as well, removing him from the office, which means that we might actually have to go down the list of the next in line. And I mean, the order of succession is clear, so we know who in the line is. But remember, the faithful cabinet meeting that President Yoon had before declaring martial law had attended by 11 people. Potentially, all those 11 cabinet members could be regarded as sort of having participated in insurrection in one form or the other. So there will be some kind of political and legal decision to be made about who should be the caretaker.
It's really a complicated issue here. Bo-kyung, let me ask you, it was a week of mounting political uncertainty over the past week. Give us the timeline of what happened since the impeachment motion fell through in Parliament.
Right, let me give you some of the details of what has happened over the past week since the first impeachment vote was disposed, as the PPP collectively decided to block the impeachment and instead consider other options. Now, after a motion to impeach the president fell through at a parliament, the prime minister held a joint press conference with the ruling party leader Han Dong-un on Sunday in their aim to, quote, ensure all state functions operate smoothly, whilst making it clear that the nation's executive will not have any part in domestic or foreign policy. Now, of course, the opposition Democratic Party of Korea heavily criticized the approach, deeming it unconstitutional, and vowed weekly impeachment motions. Now, Woo Won-sik, the Speaker of the National Assembly, also opposed the move, saying the authority granted to the president by the citizens of this country cannot be transferred and cannot be yielded to others as his will. The South Korean constitution allows the prime minister to act as interim leader, like our lawyer said before, only when the president is unable to fulfill his duties due to death, resignation, or impeachment. And given that none of these were what had happened last week, there was severe opposition, of course. Now, on Monday, the ruling PPP decided to create a new task force to handle practical affairs, being in charge of 3 things. 1, is stabilizing the political situation. 2, supporting the stabilization of the government. And 3, supporting legislative processes. The task force is being led by the 3-term lawmaker whose name is Lee. And against that, of course, the main opposition Democratic Party's chairman Lee Jae-myung said the party would again introduce the impeachment vote motion, as I said before. Now, the National Assembly held a plenary session on Tuesday. And along with passing next year's budget bill, passed the so-called Permanent Special Counsel Investigation Bill, mandating a probe into insurrection charges against President Yoon Suk-yeol. The motion aims to support a special counsel by activating the act on the appointment of an independent prosecutor who would investigate whether Yoon committed insurrection and an abuse of power by using his short-lived martial law decree on December 3rd. Now, this is a little bit different from the special counsel probe that was passed on Thursday by the National Assembly. If you let me explain the difference between the two. A permanent special counsel probe bill has fewer personnel and a shorter period of time to investigate. But unlike a regular special counsel probe, the president cannot exercise the right to veto the bill. So that is why the National Assembly passed that bill as well. Now, on Thursday, along with the special counsel bill to investigate whether President Yoon Suk-yeol committed insurrection and other violations, also passed during the plenary session was a special counsel probe into key allegations involving First Lady Kim Gun-hee, her alleged involvement in the stock manipulation scheme and interference in election nominations through a power broker. This was actually the 4th version of the bill targeting the First Lady following a similar proposal vetoed by President Yoon Suk-yeol last month, which was ultimately scrapped in a revote last Saturday. And of course, on this day, the main opposition Democratic Party introduced the new impeachment motion against Yoon, which is soon going to be up for a vote during a parliamentary plenary session today. The plenary session on Thursday actually followed after President Yoon's public address in the morning, where he made a 29-minute speech giving reason behind this decision. Now, I will share some of the details later on over what Yoon had said during his televised speech. But after listening to this speech, Han Dong-un, the leader of the ruling PPP, said the President Yoon showed no will to end his term early, but instead showed his will to fight the political situation and urged the party to take the initiative in promptly and lawfully suspending the president's duties. Now, this hinted at the reversal of Han's stance of going against the impeachment vote, and Han called on the party's ethics committee on Thursday night to discuss Yoon's expulsion from the party. Now, with more lawmakers from the ruling party reportedly deciding to vote in favor of impeachment after Han changed his mind, it became all the more likely for the impeachment motion to be passed today. However, the newly elected floor leader Kwon Sung-dong, following Chu Kyung-ho's resignation after the very first impeachment vote was disposed, said the party's consensus at that point was still against impeachment at the time. And now for the latest for what happened today. Both of the rival parties had closed-door meetings that began since early morning today. The main opposition Democratic Party, along with other minor parties, of course, stood firm in their push for impeachment and said to have strengthened the reasoning for impeachment even more. Now, what mattered was, of course, ruling PPP's party consensus, as Han strongly pushed for impeachment and Kwon was against it. Now, they apparently decided to vote, unlike last time, but to vote against the motion as the party consensus. But we'll never know how the result would go because this vote will be conducted in a secret ballot, raising the possibility of defections from the PPP.
Right, it's been a long story, Bo-kyung. We are getting live pictures from the National Assembly plenary hall. There you see lawmakers entering the plenary session hall for the high-stakes vote to oust the president over his sudden, unexpected martial law declaration some 10 days ago. So exactly 1 week ago, we saw the ruling party's bloc remaining almost entirely empty because as lawmakers from the ruling People Power Party left their seats to protest the impeachment. But I think it's quite a different scene. The ruling party bloc actually remains vacant as of now, but we expect to see a different scene today. Lawyer, from what we're seeing right now, what do you forecast of today's votes? The ruling party hasn't arrived there yet, but I think the meeting is still going on. After the meeting, will they arrive there? Will they be there?
Obviously, it's a meeting behind closed doors, so we don't know exactly what is being said and how fierce the debate is. But actually, we saw a little glimpse of what might be. Just earlier today, there were two ruling party lawmakers, Kim Sang-uk and Yoon Sang-yeon, who actually literally had a fairly lively discussion on the steps of National Assembly. Kim Sang-uk was actually holding up a sign saying that, hey, we need to impeach the president, whereas Yoon Sang-yeon really is the main spokesperson for the main bloc of the ruling party lawmakers who believe that because we don't want the Democratic Party to take over, we need to oppose impeachment. So basically, they were going back and forth about giving their respective stances on why impeachment should or should not go forward. And I expect that similar kind of lively debate is taking place among ruling party lawmakers right now, and I think we saw a glimpse of that when the camera actually captured the lively discussion between those two lawmakers.
As our reporter Kim Bo-kyung has been talking about, the president was fairly low-key on a week ago before the first impeachment vote against him, but he turned around from that stance 2 days ago before the second attempt. What could have been the reckoning behind his about face?
So this really strikes the heart of kind of the state of mind of President Yoon. And in fact, the whole affair is a little surreal because I think people still cannot believe that President Yoon went through with martial law. If you've been following Korean political news, the mention of martial law was actually present around August or September. A number of Democratic Party lawmakers actually said, hey, we heard intelligence from our own sources that martial law is being actually planned and prepared for. And at that point, I think most people thought that, hey, this is just conspiracy theory being spread around by kind of paranoid Democratic Party lawmakers. Basically, all of us who thought that way were proven wrong. And literally, anybody and everybody who thought that President Yoon he'd said some peculiar things over the years, but I think except for very few conspiracy-minded people on the sort of the Democratic side of the Democratic Party side of the politics, virtually nobody thought that President Yoon would do something like this. Really, literally, took most people by surprise, me included. For example, the governor of Bank of Korea just came out, Governor Lee Chang-yong just came out and said that his interpretation, initial reaction was that somebody must have hacked into all these TV stations and is broadcasting deepfake version of President Yoon. I mean, that's the kind of level of disbelief that Koreans actually had when we first saw on December 3rd, starting on 10:23 p.m., I recall, that President Yoon suddenly declaring martial law. It just took, I say, most South Koreans by surprise. So what is his state of mind and how does it change? I mean, it really becomes a parlor game, really.
Right. I think we're hearing that the party meeting is over and the lawmakers, I believe, from the ruling party bloc, they are entering the plenary session hall. I think their party consensus is to vote against the impeachment, but they are going to let lawmakers freely cast their votes. Lawyer Hwang, during the speech, President Yoon claimed that his declaration of martial law was an act of governance and did not constitute a crime of insurrection, while the opposition claims otherwise, citing martial law troops, hundreds of martial law troops having stormed into the assembly on the night of the military rolling declaration. Then what constitutes a crime of treason? What are the legal points here?
So basically, South Korea, for those of you who don't know South Korean history, have some unfortunate history of coup d'etats and military dictators and so forth. So we actually do have Korea.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
The vote is going on.
The assembly speaker is speaking.
We have protesters in the streets, and we are nervously watching what path we would like to take. But the path always lies within the people, and that is the history of the Republic of Korea, and therefore the Republic of Korea is strong. Today, the lawmakers who are here, the ballot papers that you would be receiving is the heaviest This is the weight of the history and the weight of democracy. I would like to ask you to cast your ballots.
대통령 윤석열 탄핵 소추안을 상정합니다.
I am proposing the impeachment motion of
박찬대 의원 나오셔서 이
President
안건에 대하여
윤석열.
제안 설명해 주시기 바랍니다.
Representative Park Chan-dae will explain more.
카메라에 잡히지 않고 있습니다.
He is not in the camera frame yet.
이렇게 의장에게 인사하고 연단에 올라섭니다.
He is saluting the speaker and took the rostrum.
두 걸음 뒤로 물러서서 의원들을 향해서
He
정중히
is
인사하고
saluting the lawmakers.
또 국민의힘 의원들을 향해서도 정중히
Also
인사합니다.
The lawmakers from the
각
People Power
방향으로
Party
자세를 바꾸며
in
허리를
every
아주 깊이
direction,
숙여 정중히
bowing
인사하고
very deeply.
단상의 마이크를
and politely.
조절합니다.
존경하는 국민 여러분,
Honorable citizens,
우원식 국회의장과
Speaker
선배
Woo-won-sik,
동료 의원 여러분,
senior and fellow members of the National Assembly,
더불어민주당
I am
원내대표 박찬대입니다.
Park Chan-dae, the floor leader of Democratic Party of Korea.
12월
2024, December 3rd,
30분
22:30.
대한민국 헌법이
This is
유린당했습니다.
when the Constitution
민주주의의 심장이
of the Republic of Korea was violated. The heart of democracy had stopped. However, our
골든타임을
people
놓치지
did not
않으셨습니다.
let go of that golden time, but
국회
grasped
앞으로
it.
한달음에 뛰쳐나와
They came to
맨몸으로
the National
계엄군
Assembly
차량을
very
막아섰습니다.
promptly, and they blocked the military
국회를
troops'
봉쇄한 경찰에
vehicles.
항의하며
They protested the police who
국회의원들과
blockaded the
고자진의
National
국회
Assembly,
진입을
and
도왔습니다.
they helped the
민주주의의
representatives
심장이
to
다시
come
뛰도록
into the National Assembly.
심폐소생을
They
해주신
had done
모든
the
분에게
emergency
존경과 감사의 마음
procedures
전합니다.
for the heart of the democracy
여러분이
to
민주주의를
thump
살리고
again.
대한민국을
You
지킨
were the protagonists
주역이십니다.
who relived the democracy and who made the democracy.
노벨 문학상
come to
수상자인
life again.
한강 작가는
The author Han Gang, who is a Nobel laureate, when
1980년
she
5월
was preparing
광주에서
Human Act,
희생된 젊은 야학 교사의
she
일기를 보고
read a diary of one of
현재가
the teachers who taught
과거를 도울 수
during 1980 in Gwangju.
구할 수
She came
있는가라는
to
질문을
she came by the
뒤집어야 한다는
question,
걸
that
깨달았다고 합니다.
can the dead help
과거가
the living?
현재를 도울 수 있는가?
Can the past help
죽은 자가
the
산자를
present?
구할 수 있는가?
Can the dead help?
저는 이번
the living?
12.3 비상 계엄 내란 사태를 겪으며
I believe going through this
과거가 현재를 도울 수 있는가라는
political
질문에
unrest
그렇다라고
today,
답하고 싶습니다.
I believe the answer to that question is yes.
1980년 5월이 2024년
May
12월을
1980 had
2024년 12월 3일
rescued
23시
the December of
계엄사령부는
2024.
포고령 1호를
The military,
발표했습니다.
the
포고령 1호의 내용은 다음과 같습니다.
proclamation was made
자유대한민국 내부에 암약하고 있는
that
반국가 세력의 대한민국 체제 전복 위협으로부터
there was a
자유민주주의를
threat
수호하고 국민의 안전을
that
지키기 위해 2024년
in
12월 3일
2024 in order
23시부로
to
대한민국
save
전역에
and
방상을
protect
포고합니다.
the
1.
Republic of Korea. They
국회와
are
지방의회 정당의 활동과 정치적 결사,
they
집회,
are
시위 등
ordering this
일체의 정치 활동을
proclamation.
금합니다.
Number one, all political activities, including activities of the National Assembly,
자유민주주의 체제를
political
부정하거나
parties are
전복을 기도하는
prohibited.
일체의
Two,
행위를 금하고
all acts that deny or
가짜뉴스,
attempt to
여론
overthrow
조작,
the
허위
free
선동을
democratic system are prohibited. The
삼,
dissemination of fake news,
모든
manipulation
언론과
of public
출판은
opinion, and false
계엄사의
propaganda
통제를
are prohibited. 3. All media and
사,
publications
사회
are
혼란을
subject to
조장하는
control of martial
파업,
law command. 4. Strikes, work stoppages, and rallies that incite social chaos are prohibited. 5. Trainee doctors and all other medical personnel who are on strike or have left their work sites must return to their positions within 48 hours and work faithfully. Those who violate the order will face punishment in accordance with the Martial Law Act. 6. Innocent ordinary citizens, excluding anti-state forces and other subversion forces, will be subject to measures to minimize inconvenience in their daily lives. Violators of the proclamation may be arrested, detained, and searched without a warrant in accordance with the Article 9 of the Martial Law Act and will be punished in accordance with Article 14 of the Martial Law Act. And such proclamation, the same one, was in place 44 years ago. In 1980, May, with this proclamation, 10 had announced similar proclamation. 1. All political acts are stopped and any rallies are prohibited. The rallies that do not have the purpose of political movement is possible, but it has to be reported in advance. 2. All publications and broadcasting should go under censorship. 3. All universities should be dismissed of classes for a certain period of time. 4. All rallies are all prohibited at workplaces. 6. Any propaganda and fake news are all prohibited, even if it's not propaganda. If it is defamation against the president, it should be prohibited, and any other propaganda that hinders the social order is prohibited. 5. All people's daily lives are secured. 6. Any foreigners and the outbound traveling is allowed. Whoever violates such proclamation will be arrested and will be punished gravely. In 1980, May, this was a proclamation, and 2024 proclamation, they are the same, like twins. Fake news or propaganda, some of the words were replaced, but prohibiting any gatherings or any protests and prohibiting all kinds of media and publications are the same. When I first heard this proclamation, it reminded me of Gwangju and its proclamation in 1980. And under this pretext, many citizens of Gwangju were arrested, and there were even massacres. And such tragedy of Gwangju were not reported at all. The Gwangju citizens who fought against the martial law for democracy, they were suppressed. If the citizens were not there who came to the National Assembly in December this year, if we were falling short of the lawmakers who came to the National Assembly, if the martial law troops had suppressed or had apprehended the lawmakers, if the soldiers were submissive to their orders, the current situation would be the same as Gwangju in 1980. The National Assembly would be dispersed and the lawmakers would have been detained at somewhere that we don't know. Some of them would be tortured or would be named as anti-state actors or subversion of constitution. The media outlets would be controlled by martial law forces, and everything would have to go through censorship, and there won't be one line of criticism towards the government. Any journalists who would be opposing the government would face punishment. Anyone who criticizes the government, the citizens who are against the government will be arrested without any warrant and will be punished. The doctors and trainee doctors, they would be stripped of their freedom of choosing their vocation, and they will be also punished. The martial law we know, the martial law that we have experienced is as such. Just by imagining it really gives chills. And with those martial law that would have been imposed upon us in December 2024. The courage of the Gwangju citizens back in 1980 and their will and their willingness to fight for democracy had led us to what we have done on December 3rd. The democracy of the Republic of Korea is very much indebted to Gwangju. Honorable members of the National Assembly, December 3rd, emergency martial law is unconstitutional and is a grave illegal act. It did not go through the procedures that the Constitution stipulates, and it is like breaching their own authority, and it is going against the national sovereignty, the principle of popular sovereignty. The Constitution, Article 77, has stipulated that martial law should be proclaimed only in the incident of an emergency state of the nation itself or any conflict or war. However, we did not have any such incidents. When it was proclaimed, when it is proclaimed, the president should notify the National Assembly without any hindrance, and that was not even that was also not abided by. Therefore, the emergency martial law proclamation was not constitutional at all. The police and the martial law troops wanted to disperse the National Assembly, and they were ordered to blockade the National Assembly. And they interrupted the entrance of the lawmakers into the National Assembly, and they tried to come into the National Assembly. They broke the glasses of the National Assembly to come into the National Assembly. And also the headquarters of NEC and the training facilities of NEC had stomped into the NEC headquarters, and they took pictures of the headquarters, the server. And they had looked for detaining facilities where the apprehended representatives and politicians would be detained. In other words, this December 3rd martial law declaration is not only unconstitutional and unlawful, but it is breaching of the popular sovereignty, and it is also trying to take charge of all the other administrative and legislative and judiciary capacities of the Republic of Korea. Therefore, Yoon Suk-yeol is the ringleader of this insurrection because Yoon Suk-yeol had himself checked the process and the progress of what is ongoing and had directed himself what to do. He spoke on the phone with Park Jong-gun, who was the commander and had directed and gave command that he should bring out these representatives who are in the National Assembly building because the quorum is not set yet. And he asked that all of these people should be taken out at once, and also had given orders to arrest the civilians. And also there was a document where it listed the people who should be arrested, and it was handed over to the Commander General of the National Police. Honorable National Assembly lawmakers, for us to upright the Constitution is the responsibility of the National Assembly. Yoon Suk-yeol had paralyzed the constitutional order, and impeachment of Yoon Suk-yeol is the only way to recover the constitutional order. The National Assembly has the power that was rendered by the Constitution, and with that, we have to suspend the duties of Yoon Suk-yeol, and that is the only and the fastest way to resolve this situation at the moment. Yoon Suk-yeol is not fit for executing his duties. This emergency, unconstitutional emergency declaration, and also his address to the nation testified that he is delusional and he is at a state where he cannot have a straight mind to make decisions. If we do not suspend him immediately from his duties, we do not know what would come next. We have to suspend his duties at once right now, and that is the only way for us to work for our people, and that is the will of our people. He is the only and the biggest risk to the Republic of Korea. He is sending shockwaves to not only political situation but also diplomatic and economic situations. If we do not pass the motion, the nation itself would spiral into a more devastated situation. The United States and other countries are expressing their grave concerns over Korea's current situation. So by impeaching, we have to show the world that the democracy is working as it should be. Fellow lawmakers, this is our last chance. Going out, please grab onto the clothes of the God who is trying to escape from our history. The Constitution of the Republic of Korea says that the Republic of Korea is a democratic republic where the sovereignty resides in the people, and also the National Assembly law also says that the representatives should act with their conscience. And based on your conscience, I ask you to vote for the impeachment. In the face of this national crisis,
반역이자
putting
헌법상
the
국회의원의
party
직무를
interest and
저버리는
party strategy first is
엄중한
turning a
시국에
blind eye
절박한
to
심정으로
the will of our
호소드립니다.
people. I would like to
대한민국의 명운이
plead desperately
국회의원 한 분
that
한 분의 선택에 달려
your
있습니다.
respective choices
탄핵에 찬성함으로써
are very important
헌정 질서를
in
파괴하는
the
자는 반드시
future of the Republic
단죄받는다는
of Korea.
역사적 교훈을
And we
남겨주시길 호소드립니다.
we have to set
탄핵에
a good
찬성함으로써
example that
대한민국의
our
모든
ballots
권력은
and our decisions
국민으로부터 나온다는
are
헌법 정신을
what
실현해 주시길
guides the future of the Republic of Korea.
탄핵에 찬성함으로써
By voting for
민주주의가
impeachment, the
굳건하다는
democracy of the
점을
Republic of
세계
Korea
만방에
is
보여주시기를
strong,
호소드립니다.
and that would be demonstrated
고맙습니다.
to the whole world. Thank you.
의원이 제안을 마치고 국회의원을 향해 인사한 뒤 연단에서
He
내려가
is again saluting the
국회의장에게도
representatives and to the National Assembly Speaker.
네, 정면으로 마주서서 아주 깊숙이 고개를
박찬대 의원
숙여
수고하셨습니다.
Thank you very much,
이
Representative Park
안건은
Chan-dae.
국회법 제130조 제2항에 따라
This
무기명
agenda
투표
will be
방식으로
voted
표결하도록
by
하겠습니다.
secret ballot in accordance with
그리고
Article
대통령
130,
탄핵 소추안은
paragraph 2 of the National
헌법
Assembly Act.
제65조
And
제2항에
also
따라
the
제적의원
impeachment
3분의
motion
2 이상의 찬성으로
is
의결한다는 점을 말씀드립니다.
should be
국회법
voted by
제133조에 따른
by
탄핵 소추
2/3
의결서안은
of
단말기의
the
회의 자료를 참고해
total
주시기 바랍니다.
votes.
국회법 제114조 제2항에 따라 간표위원을 지명하겠습니다.
Please check the reference material on the terminal in accordance with Article 133. I will appoint the counting committee in accordance with Article 114, paragraph 2. And these 8 members will be the counting members. The counting members, please come to the counting committee seats. The Director General will explain the voting method and will be voting right away.
장에게 인사하고 연단 앞에 서서 인사합니다.
The Director General took the rostrum.
투표 방법에 대하여
Let me explain the
설명드리겠습니다.
voting method. First,
명패와 투표용지를 받은 후
after receiving your nameplate and ballot paper, enter the polling booth and write ka or bu in Korean or Chinese characters. And other than the letters ka or bu, it will be considered invalid. And if you do not mark anything, it will be considered abstention.
영호 의사국장이 의원석을 향해 인사하고 연단에서 내려가
He is returning to his seat
인사합니다.
after saluting the speaker.
호명된 간표 의원들이 4명은
The counting members who were called
둘씩 나란히 앉아
are
있습니다.
sitting in pairs in front of the ballot
각각
box,
2명씩은
and other two
본회의장 뒤편에
are
마련되어 있는
at
투표소 앞에서 안내
the
진행을
ballot
하고 있습니다.
booths.
질서정연하게 줄을 선
In an orderly
의원들이
manner,
순서에 맞춰
the representatives
투표용지와
are
명패를
lining up
받아들고
and taking their
비어있는
nameplates and the
투표소
ballot
안으로
paper
들어갑니다.
and entering the ballot booths.
So lawmaker Park Chan-dae expounded on why the motion was introduced and how the motion got here, drawing a parallel with a similar incident in 1980. So the president faces an impeachment motion for his unexpected declaration of martial law on the night of December 3rd. And the opposition argues this was groundless and amounts to abuse of power and insurrection, while the president argues it was duly declared under his presidential power and does not constitute a crime of insurrection. So this is the gist of the impeachment motion, and the voting just began. So lawmakers will cast their votes by writing in either yes or no. Lawyer Hwang, the president has renewed his will to fight, and so has the opposition. What will their legal battle look like?
Well, based on President Yoon's statement that was made to the public just a few days ago, it seems that his legal strategy is two-pronged. First prong is that, hey, as the president of the Republic of Korea, I had every right to do this. And I think granted there's a minority of legal scholars who actually try to agree with him, but I will say that there's a broad consensus among lawyers and legal scholars in South Korea right now that really does not comport well with the 1997 Supreme Court precedent that actually ruled on Chun Doo-hwan and Roh Tae-woo with respect to their 1979 martial law, or coup d'etat plus martial law. It is that, yes, president does have the constitutional power to declare martial law, but there are a couple of requirements. First is that it has to be in the time of war or war-like situation. This is explicitly stated in the Korean Constitution.
Actual war.
Actual war or similar situation, basically.
Not like a political war.
No, not a, I mean, it's not really, nobody really thinks that the expression is a metaphor for political war. It's actual, battle, think about invasion from Martians or something like that, basically. So it has to be something like that. Plus, Korean Constitution doesn't give the unilateral power to Korean president. It actually splits up the power. A vote has to take place within the National Assembly right away to say yes or nay on the declaration of martial law. I mean, everybody saw on TV that police blocked lawmakers going into National Assembly, and there were literally airborne troops being dropped from helicopters, breaking windows, getting into National Assembly. That really doesn't look like president allowing lawmakers to peacefully have a vote on this martial law declaration. So, I mean, for the factual matter, it really doesn't, to the majority or supermajority of the legal scholars and lawyers in South Korea, it doesn't really seem like he had the right legal ground to declare martial law. Second prong that he's going to expound on, as was reflected in his speech, was that, look, there was big election fraud that took place in the last National Assembly election that brought all the opposition parties together to hold 192 seats out of 300 seats. He's apparently under the impression that National Election Commission has been seriously compromised, hacked, and basically that election came out that way because of a huge election fraud. Now there has been various fact-checking pieces out there on the newspapers and broadcasts, as well as public statements made by the National Election Commission, so I won't go through that. But mainly I think the bottom line is that he's been listening to a lot of far right-wing conspiracy theorists on YouTube. And this has nothing to do with kind of mainstream view of how the election process actually went. And the fact of the matter is that he's won some elections. I mean, obviously he's the president, so he won the presidential election. And the local elections that took place a few months after he became president, he won that too. So he's basically arguing that, look, there was no fraud in the elections I won, but there was a big fraud in the elections I lost. And, it's not exactly a very logical argument to be making.
Right. I think we're learning that lawmakers Kwon Sung-dong and Kim Ki-hyun from the ruling Power Party have just cast their votes. Bo-kyung, if the impeachment motion is passed today, the fate of the impeachment will be handed over to the Constitutional Court. What happens there given that 3 seats remain empty out of the 9 justices following recent retirements?
Right, like you said, it would be Constitutional Court's role to either uphold or reject the motion, and will be given 180 days or around 6 months to make a ruling. The Constitutional Court reviewing the impeachment case is the 3rd time actually in South Korea's history, as it already had seen 2 presidential impeachment motions in the past, with the impeachment case of the late Roh Moo-hyun in 2004 and the country's first ever presidential impeachment of Park Geun-hye over the year from 2016 to 2017. Now, in 2004, lawmakers voted for impeaching then-President Roh, but the Constitutional Court ruled against the motion 3-6. And for then-President Park, lawmakers voted to impeach her, which was then approved by all of the 8 Constitutional Court justices that were sitting at the time. Now, in 2004, for then-President Roh, it took the Constitutional Court 2 months to give its ruling, while it took 3 months for Park to be impeached. Now, for this time, as you have already said, there are concerns over the court right now as it is currently understaffed. Constitutional Court is typically filled with 9 judges, 3 recommended by the National Assembly, 3 by the President, and 3 designated by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, at least 7 justices are needed to start reviewing the motion, and at least 6 out of these 7 justices then need to approve the motion for final impeachment. Now, right now, there are only 6 on the bench, with 3 assembly recommended seats were not filled, making it enough for justices to make a decision, but not enough to review the case. But as the Article 23, Paragraph 1 of the Constitutional Court Act got suspended following after Lee Jin-suk, chairperson of the Korea Communications Commission, filed a complaint to suspend the legal provision requiring at least 7 justices to review a case, and the court unanimously passed it last month, they will be able to review the case. Still, concerns mount over whether making a proper decision without a full bench, as there is a huge difference between needing 6 out of 9 votes in favor and needing to have all 6 out of 6 having to vote in favor to impeach. Thus, the Assembly are seeking to make the court full by the end of this year. Now, after Constitutional Court makes a decision, if they uphold the impeachment motion, then a presidential election will be held 60 days afterwards. In the case of President Park Geun-hye, the impeachment motion was passed in the Assembly on December 9th, 2016, and the Constitutional Court issued a ruling for her removal on March 10th of the following year, which was 2017. And then the presidential election was held on May 9th.
Right. It looks like the voting is underway in a calm manner. Meanwhile, lawyer Hwang Bo-kyung just gave us a recap of what happens in the Constitutional Court, that it falls short of the 3 seats right now out of the 9 justices. It's hard to predict, but how likely is the Constitutional Court to uphold the motion if it's passed at the National Assembly?
Well, I think one thing we can sort of rule out is the kind of a split vote. Say that 7 votes against and 2 votes for removal of the President Yoon. That is because at least sort of the consensus view of the way that Korean Constitutional Court works, at least among the legal scholars, I'm just giving you sort of a prevailing legal wisdom about how the Korean Constitutional Court works, and very sensitive issue like this. And this is as sensitive as you can get, removal of president from his presidential office. Then we don't expect the Constitutional Court justices to sort of be at each other's throats and not really resolve their differences. Whatever the differences in their opinions to be, I think it will be resolved. I think we expect to see 9-0 or whatever how many nominations actually go through by the end of December. I understand that the Democratic Party is now nominating and trying to fill those vacancies, so we might actually get 9 justices by the end of the month. Whatever the ultimate number that actually considers this trial, I think it will be a unanimous decision. One factor that people are sort of worrying about is that there are actually 2 justices on the Constitutional Court whose term ends in, I think, March and April. So they actually may have to be replaced, which means that the new justices may have to come in and so forth. That may actually speed up the process, or they might actually delay the process. It could actually go either way. In the Park Geun-hye impeachment trial case, that actually was another concern. There were a couple of justices whose term was ending. Actually, the Constitutional Court back then actually managed to pass the final decision before those terms ended. So it could go either way. But I mean, we do have Constitutional Court does have 2016, 2017 period to look at, and I'm sure that will be huge learning for them.
And staying with the Constitutional Court, the Article 51 of the Constitutional Court Act states that the full bench may suspend adjudication proceedings if a criminal proceeding is underway for the same reason as in the request for impeachment. What are the chances that this article will be adopted by the court?
Again, the key word is may, right?
Yes.
The court may, so it has discretion. And we never have any precedent, though we lawyers like to have some kind of precedent, some kind of rule that tells what to do. When the rule says you may do something, Okay, does that mean that I have to do this? No, you don't have to do this. Does that mean I cannot do this? Well, you can do this. Literally means that you have to exercise your judgment, right? With extremely politically sensitive issue. And plus, usually presidents don't get investigated. Like, for example, this was never an issue with President Park Geun-hye back in 2016, 2017, because the charges against Park Geun-hye were which the presidential immunity actually applies. Now, there are exceptions to Korean doctrine of presidential immunity stated in the Constitution, that is for treason and insurrection. So for insurrection, technically, even president can be arrested under South Korean law. Has never been tested, never been tried. I mean, just this past week, police and the prosecutors tried to do, search and seizure on the presidential office.
Yes.
And they were stopped by the security detail. We have competing forces, competing laws kind of coming into conflict right there. So if you try to arrest President Yoon, what happens? Well, we're in unexplored territory right now.
So no one knows what's going to happen. Lawyer Hwang, let's go back to President Yoon's address on Thursday. He raised allegations of election fraud. You mentioned this a little bit previously as one of the reasons behind his martial law declaration.
That's right.
He raised questions about the National Election Commission's data system. Some raised questions that he cannot believe in that. And the commission refuted his claim as self-denial, saying it was the very system through which he was elected president.
Yep.
What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think President Yoon has been watching too many conspiracy theory videos, basically. An interesting story that I've heard on radio is that former ruling party lawmaker named by the name of Kim Ung, he's also a former prosecutor. He actually, told this story a few days ago on a morning radio show. Basically said all in his presidency, Yoon, Kim Ung, and another lawmaker who used to be head of the National Statistics Office actually had this discussion about whether National Election Commission was prone to hacking and fraud. And basically that other lawmakers said that is impossible. And sort of he had actual background in economics and statistics, explained how it was impossible. And supposedly President Yoon got really mad and never refused to speak to that lawmaker ever again. This was a story that's told by lawmaker Kim Ung just a few days ago. Which means that President Yoon has been harboring this conspiracy theory in his mind for quite some time, and it seems that he's been more convinced ever that it is actually true. And that is actually why on December 3rd, he actually sent quite a large contingent of troops to the National Election Office.
I think we're hearing that the ruling People Power Party lawmakers are casting their votes and leaving the Assembly Hall right after that. Lawyer Hwang, it looks like, let's talk about politics, not just the legal points, but so many to talk about. It looks like the internal conflict within the ruling People Power Party has widened, especially between the pro-Han and pro-Yoon factions. What could become of the party?
Wow, that's a really good question. Will be divided, but at the same time, they be all fighting for their survival, right? I mean, look, it's a ruling party that produced a sitting president that just declared martial law, about to be impeached, and very high likelihood of removal because of his very combative stance. Like, until last week, it looked like President Yoon was going to, work with a number of party leaders, including Han Dong-un, the party chairman, to somehow facilitate some kind of smooth transition where he steps down, power gets transferred over to the prime minister and so forth. But he changed his mind.
We would like to begin the vote counting. We will first open the nameplate box. The counting committee members are moving a table to the front.
화면상에는 지금 본회의장이 한 화면에
This
넣을 때
plenary
펼쳐지는
session
형태로 잡혀 있고요.
The entirety of the plenary session is in the camera frame,
우측에 마련이 돼
and
있습니다.
the counting seat is at the right-hand side of the speaker.
개표 선언을 한 후
After the counting is declared, the box is open, and all the nameplates
쓸어내고 있습니다.
are on the table
개표를
right now.
진행하는 요원들과
The
간표
committee
위원
members,
8명이
8 committee members and the staff members are
확인하고 있습니다.
checking on this status.
명패는
So the voting just ended and the vote counting began. I think they are now counting the nameplates there to check the number of the number of lawmakers who cast their votes and make sure they match the number of the votes. Lawyer Huang, I want to pick up where we left off. We were talking about how the ruling party is going to be split or divided because of this factional conflicts. Please continue.
So if you look at 2016 precedent, we actually saw a faction of the ruling party break away, form a new party, and actually voted for impeachment. And what lawmakers today remember is that the key members from the breakaway group, namely Yoo Seung-min and Yoo Seung-min, basically,
Yes.
and
Key
whole bunch
figure
of people,
Yoo Seung-min,
Yoo Seung-min,
yes.
it's been branded traitor by the sort of, the so-called Yeongnam voting bloc. It's never been able to shake off that the traitor label that has been pinned on him, and he's been sort of walking in the political wilderness ever since then. So that's probably really fresh on their mind. And also for the conservative lawmakers, the 5 years of Moon Jae-in administration was really harsh. Being out of power is a harsh thing. There were a number of them who were prosecuted for various crimes or allegations in connection with the stuff that President Park Geun-hye was impeached for. So all those things are really fresh on their minds. So all those things are actually keeping them together. And basically that was the main force behind what happened last Saturday when most of them actually just walked out and did not participate in the vote. But with enough and additional revelation that has been taking place the whole week, I think enough people have changed their mind. I mean, literally, 7 lawmakers have explicitly said they're going to vote yes to impeachment. So that's the change that we've seen from last Saturday. So we'll see what the result is. But I think, again, they're really entering into a new territory in the sense that they have the learning from 2016, but they have this fresh new reality, and they really do not like the opposition party leader Lee Jae-myung. The kind of hatred they had for Lee Jae-myung is kind of not comparable to the kind of opposition they towards Moon Jae-in. So all those things will be coming to an head right after this.
They are in a very difficult situation. Meanwhile, Bo-kyung, what does the reckoning behind for ruling and the opposition parties when it comes to a possible early presidential election after if the president is removed?
Right. I think we need to focus on what the stance of the main opposition Democratic Party of Korea would be. The DP actually wants to hold the next presidential election before any sentencing for its leader Lee Jae-myung comes out. I mean, right now he faces many criminal charges. And if we take a look at the latest ones, in one trial, a district court acquitted him of inducing a mayoral official to make a false testimony, while in another, he was handed a 1-year prison sentence, suspended for 2 years in an election law violation case. Now, both cases are headed for appellate trials, and if Lee gets sentenced to at least 1 million Korean won in fines, that is around $700 or more, is confirmed in the second and third trials, he will lose his parliamentary seat and be prohibited from running for office for 5 years. Now, in that case, Lee's path to running in the next presidential election would be apparently blocked. And the Democratic Party losing its leader and the most clear front runner when it comes to the presidential election could fall into, of course, a chaos with a reshuffling of internal power necessary. Now, the election.
The number of nameplate is 300. We're now going to open the ballot box.
이번에는 명패함을 탁자에 올려놓습니다.
Now the ballot box is placed on the table.
300명이면
If it matches the number of 300, it means that all the representatives of the Republic of Korea has participated in this vote.
Right, so I think we're hearing that all 300 lawmakers have cast their votes and now they're opening the ballot box. Bo-kyung, please continue. You were there talking about some legal risks of the Democratic Party leader.
Right, sure. So I was talking about how the DP is at risk of losing its leader and the most clear frontrunner when it comes to presidential election if the impeachment vote gets passed later on. The election law stipulates that appeals and final rulings in election-related criminal cases must be completed within 3 months each. And based on this, Lee's eligibility to run in the next presidential election should be determined by May next year. And this is exactly why the DP may be rushing the impeachment process, because if the impeachment motion is passed by the end of this month, there is a greater possibility that the next presidential election could take place before Lee's third trial, as DP wants.
Right, so we are waiting, we are seeing the ballots being counted as we speak. Lawyer Hwang, while we wait for the voting results, let's talk about the past. Former President Park Geun-hye, this name appears a lot today. Former President Park Geun-hye was impeached in 2016, between 2016 and 17. How is this impeachment different from the past?
Well, I think, first of all, I think the popular feeling towards President Park Geun-hye and all the scandal surrounding with her close associate named Choi Soon-sil. I mean, for those of us who lived in Korea through that time, the name is very familiar to us. Choi Soon-sil, she actually was at the heart of the whole scandal that brought Park Geun-hye administration down. Was that it was something of a shame in the sense that we could not believe that our president would be engaged in this kind of behavior. It seemed that she just kind of checked out, didn't really attend to her presidential duties, and handed over all the power over to Choi Soon-sil, and Choi Soon-sil was the actual making, the big decisions and so forth. And in fact, there are a whole bunch of other criminal trials that are actually still going on. Believe it or not, 8 years after the fact, in connection with various things that happened in Korean society that really had to do with corruption, meaning that a bunch of Korean big corporations gave bribes to Choi Soon-sil, close associate of Park Geun-hye, to get things done, basically, get government approval, get national pension fund to say yes to the merger, stuff like that. So we're still muddling through that mess 8 years after impeachment vote back in 2016. So that's sort of the core, at the core of impeachment we had in 2016. Right now what President Yoon has done is something I can't believe that he has done. This is total disbelief. Like, what is he thinking? I mean, there's a small segment of Korean population, I would say somewhere between 10 to 20%, who really hate the Democratic Party, and especially its leader, Lee Jae-myung, and kind of say that, oh, President Yoon must have had really good reason for have done this. But I will say on behalf of maybe 70 to 80% of the South Koreans, and many of whom are very much out in force in front of the National Assembly as we speak, are basically thinking this is beyond imagination. I mean, we thought the President Yoon is a little unusual, but this is just breaks the definition of an unusual. Wondering what was he thinking? I mean, this is total disbelief, and it's recalling back to 1979 when Chun Doo-hwan committed that infamous December 12th coup d'état. It's really, bringing out the young people especially. We are seeing a lot of people in their 20s and 30s who did not experience 1979 coup d'état, but who are sort of like, hey, this is not just the history books. This is happening right now. We need to defend our democracy. We cannot believe that our president will be doing this in 2024. So I think state of disbelief versus the state of shame is the key difference that I see between 2016 and now.
Let me repeat this. For the impeachment motion to pass, a 2/3 majority, that is 200 votes, is needed. The pan-opposition bloc holds 100. Let's go straight to the scene.
The number of vote is also 300. The results will be announced shortly.
이번에는 숫자를 확인한
Right, so what I was talking about is the pan-opposition bloc holds 192 seats, and this means it requires at least 8 ruling People Power Party members to vote in favor of the motion. Lawyer Hwang, we were talking about the former President Park, how she got impeached, she was ousted. It's the second straight time that a conservative president has faced a judgment from the assembly since taking office. Do you see it as a crisis for the conservative bloc?
Well, I think it's a crisis for everyone involved, actually, because
even the opposition party?
Yeah, in the sense that, okay, so clearly the primary responsibility is right in the President Yoon's own administration. What did people who work around him have done to kind of stop President Yoon from doing something totally unbelievable, basically. I still can't believe that. I basically, even if somebody really explains his thinking to me, if he spills all his beans to me, say, over a soju or something that he loves, I'm not sure that I will really be able to kind of understand his thinking process. So primarily, responsibility lies with him and his immediate aides. But at the same time, like, who catapulted President Yoon's career? He was Prosecutor General under President Moon administration, right? I mean, he became a star back in 2012 when he was investigating. Now it seems really quaint. Internet replies, so literally it turned out that national intelligence officers were putting up some internet replies on various internet boards, and that became a scandal, and he was investigating that, and he came out as a very strong, principled prosecutor who's now willing to bend to his superiors' pressure. That's how he became sort of national star, and it's President Moon Jae-in's administration that made him Prosecutor General, thinking that, oh, he's the right man for reforming the prosecutor's office. Fast forward 2024, it seems that everybody had President Yoon a little bit wrong. Me included, in the sense that I was never really a supporter of President Yoon, but to the extent that he'll do something like this was not something that, if you asked me on December 2nd, the day before that, do you think President Yoon is going to declare martial law in sometime next 5 years? I'll say, oh, heck no, come on, dream on. I think that would have been my reaction too. So I think most people just got him wrong.
So no doubt we're in a little bit of awkward situation right now. Bo-kyung, while we wait for the voting results to come out, they are counting the votes, how many votes are yes and how many are no. Bo-kyung, how have investigations gone into the martial law incident so far? Can you give us a recap?
All right, well, the investigations and developments are really complicated, as until Wednesday.
That's right.
Yeah, 3 separate investigation units were each doing their own probe: the National Police Agency, the Prosecutor's Office, and the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. Now, CIO has been keep requesting the other bodies to transfer the investigation to the agency, citing the need to minimize confusion and inefficiency caused by overlapping investigations. And the prosecution turned down the CIO's request, and so the police, defense ministry, and the CIO decided on Wednesday to conduct a joint investigation. Now, this is how the investigative bodies have been organized for now. Now, let me tell you the major developments throughout the week. It's going to be really long, so if you need to interrupt me, please do, because I'm looking forward to the result.
If there's a vote result, I will stop you there.
Yes. So the both prosecution and the police said that they had named President Yoon as a suspect on charges of treason on Monday in their separate probes. On Monday, prosecution investigation unit had taken former defense minister Kim Yong-hyun, allegedly the mastermind behind the martial law declaration, into custody at a detention facility under emergency arrest provisions. And later on, Seoul Central District Court decided to officially arrest him.
Right. I'm going to have to interrupt you, Bo-kyung, right there.
Yes.
I think we're going to learn about the results.
투표 결과를 말씀드리겠습니다.
Let me announce the result.
대통령 윤석열
The impeachment of motion,
투표수 300표
out of total of 300 votes,
가
in favor,
204표,
204,
부
against,
85표,
85,
기권 3표,
abstained
무효
3,
8표로서
and 8 invalid votes were cast, and it has been passed.
사내에 앞서 한 말씀 드리겠습니다.
Before we adjourn, I would like to speak a few words.
의원 여러분,
Honorable Fellow citizens, members of the National Assembly, today the National Assembly has passed the impeachment motion against President Yoon Suk-yeol. As the representative of the people, we have committed to uphold the Constitution, and it is based on that. Since the emergency declaration of martial law until today, the yearning for democracy that the people of Korea had shown had led us to here where we are today. And the National Assembly will engrave that in our hearts. Now, following the constitutional order, the impeachment, whether it would be impeachment or not, the Constitutional Court will be deliberating and will make the decision. And until then, the National Assembly will do our utmost so that everything goes as planned and as fast as possible. The democracy is a testimony of the people, and it can be testified by the people. Now, let us all together go forward, step forward to the future. I hope that everything goes back to normal and that any crisis in terms of diplomacy or economy, nothing grave would happen. The National Assembly will join forces with the other authorities. Please carry on with your daily lives, and the National Assembly will do our best to do what we are asked to do. I hope that your year end is a little bit more happier, and I hope that you will meet with your families and loved ones and do not cancel your gatherings. The economy is faltering, and the future of the Republic of Korea and the hope of the Republic of Korea lies with you. Thank you very much, the people of the Republic of Korea. We would like to adjourn today's meeting.
지금까지 장현정, 박정숙이었습니다. 이상 마칩니다.
Right, so we just heard the voting results. So out of 300 members of the Assembly, all of them cast their votes. 204 supported in favor of the impeachment, 85 against it, 3 abstained, and 8 were invalid. This means President Yoon Suk-yeol will be suspended from his duties as president. I want to get your reaction, our panelists. Lawyer Hwang, we just saw the results. I want to get your reaction. Was it in line with your expectation?
It was. So if you do the quick math, basically there were 12 defection votes, right? Because the opposition party says 192 votes. The ultimate yes vote was 204, which means that the PPP lawmakers, 12 of them, said yes. So, and 7 of them already said they'll say yes, which means that we had 5 additional defections that were not made public before the vote. So in the sense that the outcome, I kind of expected this, given the whole week of additional revelation. But in another sense, it kind of, the 12 is slightly lower number than I expected. I expected more PPP lawmakers kind of break down as, I mean, basically for past week, for those of us who have been following the news fairly closely, it was just like day after revelation of high-ranking police officers and high-ranking military officers telling us details about how martial law was going to carried out, and you really as additional revelation came out, just things didn't look good for President Yoon, and he came out sounding very combative rather than very repentant. So I thought that will all kind of force a lot of PPP lawmakers to defect more, but 12 is a somewhat smaller number than I expected, I have to say.
What about you, Bo-kyung? Was it in line with your expectations? And I want to ask, what's the process from here now?
Right. Well, it's not shocking at all for me as well, because we already assumed there would be defections from the ruling PPP. And now that President Yoon's impeachment motion vote got passed, I'd like to tell you some of the next steps that is going to happen. The National Assembly Secretariat for Legislative Proceedings will give the impeachment vote approval document him to the committee chairperson of the Legislation of Judiciary Committee, Jung Chung-rae, and he will go directly to the Constitutional Court to submit that. Now, the official from the Secretariat, meanwhile, will head to the Yongsan Presidential Office to give the notification to President Yoon, freezing his duties as president for up to 180 days during the Constitutional Court's review period. And it took about 3 hours for the notification to reach former President Park Geun-hye 8 years ago. And Prime Minister Han Duck-soo would take over his duties as interim leader, and only Yoon's title as president would be retained as a suspended president, cannot exercise any powers, including the diplomatic authority, appointment or dismissal of public officials, or command of the armed forces. However, the president is entitled to protocol privileges, such as residing in the presidential residence, using official vehicles and aircraft, and receiving security services that he enjoyed up until now. And his office would also remain with senior secretaries proceeding to answer to him as usual.
Lawyer Hwang, we have been talking about this before, but just to give us a recap, the president is now suspended from his presidential powers. What happens? Who's going to fill his shoes? You're saying that Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is going to be substituted, but he is facing his own troubles as well.
Right. So now it's up to the political decision of the Democratic Party to how much do they want to force in a case against Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. I mean, obviously, he's been saying that he kind of opposed the martial law, but President Yoon was so adamant that he could not do anything. On the other hand, it doesn't seem like the 11 cabinet members who were in that fateful cabinet meeting when President Yoon told them that he was going to declare martial law. I mean, nobody basically said, I oppose, I tender my resignation. Nobody said that, right? I mean, nobody's looking really great at this point. So depending on who you believe, I mean, I think case could be made against every one of those 11 cabinet members for having abetted and aided or not. It really is kind of a political decision to be made by the Democratic Party about how much to push this case. Personally, I think they'll actually say, yeah, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is harmless enough. I think they'll just let him be the caretaker, but we'll see how it goes.
Bo-kyung just mentioned this, the next step, the process, but now this will be sent to the Constitutional Court. How likely is the court upholds the motion?
Personally, I think very high likely, just based on the fact that the kind of mess, at least, I mean, I used to be a law professor at Korean law school, so I still keep in touch with many law professors and lawyers in the Korean legal community. And it seems to me that a very vast supermajority of lawyers and legal scholars basically do see it as insurrection. So I think I expect to see most of the Constitutional Court justices to see it the same way, which means removal.
All right, Bo-kyung. What would be the responses from Washington or Tokyo about this impeachment motion being passed and the president being removed from his presidential powers for now?
Right. Well, for that, I'd like to first tell you how the U.S. have been reacting to the impeachment motion. So it was dismissed last weekend, right? And first of all, due to President Yoon's botched martial law orders, Seoul and Washington had to postpone a lot of things that were actually in schedule. And the U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also canceled his plans to travel to South Korea as well. Now, White House officials have reportedly called for the full and proper functioning of democratic processes in South Korea, saying that the right to peaceful protest must be respected in all circumstances, as it is essential to a healthy democracy after the impeachment vote was failed last weekend. Now, the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller had been keep saying that Biden's counterpart in Korea is still President Yoon, as he is the country's sitting president after the dismissal of the vote last weekend. But now that the impeachment vote has been passed, I think there will be a shift in the position in the U.S. as well. And in terms of Japan, it actually had some kind of a low toned down approach towards the turmoil in South Korea. But there had been some pause between the two countries' efforts to improve bilateral ties up until now, as President Yoo, under travel ban, had no, possibility to continue his leaders' meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister and still other officials there. Now that the impeachment vote has passed, I'm pretty sure Han Duck-soo, though we do not know for sure, he's going to do the duties of the President Yoo. So I believe that Japan would also try to continue this improvement in bilateral ties with Prime Minister Han Duck-soo.
Lawyer Hwang, now I want to ask you this. How will the president and his legal team prepare for the legal battle at the court, Constitutional Court?
I fully expect him to take the same stance that he took during the 30-minute address that we discussed earlier, which means he's going to say that his presidential authority was fully constitutional and that martial law was legal. I fully expect him to, come up with yet push ahead with the election fraud theory. It really does seem like he believes that stuff, and his past shows that he's a very obstinate person. So I don't think he's going to really change his mind and suddenly become repentant. So I expect to see, this kind of legal battle going on ultimately to be, met with common sense and kind of rejected by the Constitutional Court.
Then what does this vote ousting the president mean for the government and the ruling PPP? What will be their next step?
The fact that only 12 people defected from the PPP lawmakers, I kind of feel like they're really reluctant to let go of power, kind of accept the reality as it is. There's the famous 5 steps to, dealing with grief, right? Denial and all that stuff. For those of you who are interested in the psychology literature, you can steps of 5 steps to deal with big events in life. I think we kind of expect to see lawmakers to sort of go through those stages.
Before I let you go, Mr. Lawyer Hwang, chaos continued in the political arena ever since the president declared a sudden martial law more than 10 days ago. What do you make of all this? What have happened in this country?
Let's see. I want to kind of compare this to what happened in 2020, January 6th in Washington, D.C., United States. There was attack on the U.S. Where the Capitol, the building where the both House and Senate meet. That's the U.S. 2 houses for the U.S. The Parliament. There was attack. There was literally a mob that went to attack Capitol Hill to overturn the elections, and it seems that really not got resolved. It seems that the president-elect Trump is going to pardon most of the people who got arrested in connection with that. So for that, I sort of am a little pessimistic about the way that U.S. democracy is holding on. To me, at least, the institutions failed. In Korea, I think the institutions held, and ultimately, I think the lesson that we are learning from Korea is that the last bulwark against threats against democracy is the people itself. Let me remind you, on the December 3rd, when that martial law was declared, literally about 10,000 ordinary Koreans flocked to the National Assembly. That's based on various mobile phone data. Literally went there, blocked police, blocked military, allowed lawmakers to climb the wall and carry out that vote that ultimately rejected the martial law. I think democracy is very much alive. People of Korea are willing to fight for it. And then I think for that gives me a lot of optimism.
Right. Bo-kyung, what about you? Any final thoughts before I let you go?
Right. Well, ever since President Yoon declared the martial law order, it was such a chaotic society in South Korea. And as a defense ministry correspondent, it was really fearful because if anything happens, if any provocations from North Korea happens, that would mean a lot in Korean society. So I'm very, I don't know if okay to say this, but I am quite relieved that now there would be some processes made to, appoint perhaps a new defense minister to protect the country and so on. So, and also amid this especially important situation where the new administration, the Trump administration is coming in the Washington, D.C., I think it's all the more important that we think about our diplomatic situation right now instead of the political affairs and chaos. So like our lawyer said, I'm quite optimistic about the result.
All right, thank you, Bo-kyung, for your updates and everything. And lawyer Jung-Woo Kwang, thank you for your time and insights.